Hello, welcome to Gathering Zion's People. In considering where to move to, some people consider elevation or temple location, where there are Latter-day Saints. I thought I'd combine the two ideas. Just a note, this video has statistics. If you like knowing about temple data mingled with scripture, you might like this video. Why consider elevation? Elevation is a factor with climate, water, and moisture. Think tsunamis and hurricanes at the coasts and low elevations, rain in many places, not much in the deserts, and snow usually at higher elevations. Flooding is usually at lower elevations, especially where it is flat terrain. Everybody has their preferred climate and elevation range, based upon health, daily activities, and sights to see in nature. Let's consider scriptural insights in regards living by oceans. Doctrine and Covenants, section 88, verse 90 says, that the seas shall heave themselves beyond their bounds. In the book of Revelation, chapter 16, verse 20, the islands shall flee away. Doctrine and Covenants, section 133, talks about the sea levels rising because of melting ice. The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints has about 350 temples operational or announced and everything in between that. I was surprised that 2 planned temples will be at approximately 10 to 11,000 feet in elevation. Wow! Those are the Cusco, Peru temple and the La Paz, Bolivia temple. The dedicated and operational temple currently with the highest elevation is the Cochabamba, Bolivia temple, at 8,697 feet. I had imagined that South America has a lot of rainforest, beaches, and flatlands. I had no idea that it has so many communities at high elevations. Temples by elevation ranges. Right now, there are 7 operating temples at 7,000 to 9,000 feet elevation, with all but one in Mexico and South America. The only one in that range in the USA is in Monticello, Utah. There is one operating temple between 6,000 and 7,000 feet elevation, and that's the Star Valley Temple in Wyoming. There are 3 other temples on my list which will be built in Guatemala, Kenya, and Mexico. In the 5,000 to 6,000 feet elevation range, there are even more, 14 operational temples. Most of them are in the United States in the Intermountain and Southwest, in New Mexico, Utah, Colorado, Idaho, Nevada, and Arizona. Outside the USA, those in that range are in Mexico, Guatemala, and South Africa. In the 4,000 to 5,000 feet elevation range, there are 17 operational temples, with 2 under major renovations, which are the Salt Lake Temple and the First Temple in Provo, Utah. Most of the temples in this 4,000 to 5,000 feet elevation range are in Utah, but there are some in other locations, and there are many more being built or planned for the 4,000 to 6,000 feet range. Scriptural reference to temples in mountains. This brings to mind the scripture passage in the Old Testament in Isaiah chapter 2, verses 2 and 3. It says, "And it shall come to pass in the last days that the mountain of the Lord's house shall be established in the top of the mountains, and shall be exalted above the hills, and all nations shall flow unto it. And many people shall go and say, Come ye, and let us go up to the mountain of the Lord, to the house of the God of Jacob. And he will teach us of his ways, and we will walk in his paths. For out of Zion shall go forth the law, and the word of the Lord from Jerusalem." Who would have known that one day there would be so many houses of worship and temples in the tops of the mountains of the world? There are 11 operating temples in the 3,000 to 4,000 feet elevation range, 13 operating temples in the 2,000 to 3,000 feet range, 20 temples are operational in the 1,000 to 2,000 feet range, 22 temples are operating in the 500 to 1,000 feet range, 23 temples are operational in the 200 to 500 feet range. 21 temples are operating in the 100 to 200 feet elevation range. 34 operating temples are at the less than 200 feet elevation range. More than half of the operational temples are below 1,000 feet in elevation. Low elevation temples and future concerns. Believe it or not, there are a handful of temples at a very low elevation. The Fort Lauderdale Temple in Florida is at 5 feet elevation. There are a few more being built in the teens or single-digit elevations, but the absolute shocker to me is the Hague, Netherlands Temple, built at 3.5 feet below sea level. Considering the last days prophecies of the seas heaving themselves beyond their bounds, I wonder how many of these low-elevation temples we will lose one day. We can't say it won't happen, considering that in history this has occurred by the hand of nature or man. Anyways, if this subject interests you, please go to this blog for a detailed list of temples and elevations at gatheringzionspeople.blogspot.com. A link for that is in the description box below. Also included in the description are photographic artist websites that sell nice photos of the temples and other websites that have information on the temples themselves. If you liked or loved this video, please subscribe to my channel. Then give it a thumbs up and consider sharing it with someone else or commenting. Thank you very much.